Hello, everybody. My name is Mariusz Skrobała from Poland, Central Europe. And today with me, a very, very special guest joining me from Florida in United States. The one that work I admire a lot, Alex Newman. Hello, Alex.
Hey, it's great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Alex, you're an award-winning journalist. You have your media organization, Liberty Sentinel, and a website, libertysentinel.org. You are an author of book, Indoctrinating Our Children to Death. You are taking part in the famous ReAwaken America Tour next to General Michael Flynn, the former Trump advisor, and his son, Eric Trump. And you have your own show, Behind the Deep State, on the New American Magazine. Have I missed anything?
I do a few things. You can find it all at libertysentinel.org. It's got my whole biography. But yeah, that's a good roundup.
And you've been to interesting documentaries by Epoch Times, and the most recent one is Behind Sheep's Clothing with James Lindsay, yes?
Yes, that was the most recent documentary I was in, and I write for the Epoch Times very regularly, so I've been writing with them since about 2019, I believe.
Alex, in 1918, a German philosopher called Oswald Spengler published a book called The Decline of the West. And the notion was that the Western civilization is falling and it will die. Today, we are witnessing mass immigration coming to our shores. In Europe, you have the same problem in the United States. The border with Mexico is wide open. There is a demographic catastrophe among the native ethnic population of Europe and United States. Of course, the political left is improving the statistics, bringing in a lot of people from outside the Western civilization. Do you think that the Western civilization, in fact, is falling?
I think right now it looks very much like it is falling, and that's partly because very few people even understand what it is. I think Western civilization, it used to be frequently referred to as Christendom, has completely forgotten why it exists, what it is. It's raison d'être, as they say in French. It's reason for being. And I think all of that is completely inseparable from the Bible. If you don't understand what the Bible teaches, and you don't understand how the Bible shaped and really created Western civilization, then you can't possibly preserve or much less restore Western civilization. And so there is a deliberate war to destroy Christendom. There is a deliberate, and I would say satanic effort to undermine what used to be called Christendom, the free world, the Western world, whatever term you want to use. And that's partly because there is this plan, and they've said it openly now for many decades, to build what they call a new world order, a one world system. And the ideas, the ideology, the systems, the institutions of the new world order that they want to build are completely incompatible with the principles of Christianity that underpin Western civilization. And so in the West now, I don't know if it's the same in Poland, but in the United States, in Canada, and France, all over the Western world, they talk about building back better. We're going to build back better. And what they don't say, although it's implied, is that you can't build something back better unless you first destroy what was there originally. So that's what's happening. We're watching the controlled demolition of Christendom, of the Western world. And the hope by these evildoers is to replace it with something new, monstrous, and totalitarian, and I believe profoundly evil.
So the main causes, in your opinion, is the fall of the religion and morality also.
Well, I think that is inextricably linked with some of the other main causes, but I think that really is the root of where it all comes to. Now, I would say the primary tool that they have used to bring about this destruction is now the 5 generations of incredible indoctrination that's been taking place in what governments across the West call the public school system. Western civilization was not built by government education. Western civilization was built by the church, and it was built by strong families. It wasn't even built by civil government. The institutions of civil government, as prescribed by God, were an outgrowth of the Christian faith as manifested in family and as manifested through the church institutions. And so now that we have surrendered that ground, church and family are now taking a backseat, and civil government is taking over everything, including education, including your healthcare, including every area of your life. Well, we end up with this monumental problem. And I say education. That's the focus of my latest book, Indoctrinating Our Children to Death, because I believe this is the single most significant cause. When we handed over our children to be educated by the government, we made a catastrophic mistake. Instead of passing on the values, the traditions, the morals, the faith of our forefathers, the ones who built our civilization, we've now handed them over to, especially in the case of the United States, it may not quite be so bad in Poland yet, but a godless government that lies, that cheats, that steals, that murders babies on an industrial scale. And what did we think was going to happen when we allowed our children to be educated by totalitarians who hate God, who hate family, who hate our country, and who hate our institutions? This is the natural result of that. And of course, one of the main purposes of these systems, as I document very clearly with primary source documents, was precisely to turn young people away from God, away from the Bible, away from their families, and away from their traditions, their culture, their institutions. And it's been incredibly successful.
We've all seen the opening ceremony of Paris Olympics. It was a black mass, satanic.
Yep. And this is now part of the popular culture in the United States, Mariusz. If you look, for example, at the Super Bowl, which is the biggest sporting event in America, all these guys, they put tights on and they throw a pigskin up and down the field. They now do blatantly satanic halftime shows. They dance around half naked. They put on devil horns. They do just absolutely disgusting things. So this is, I think, a symptom of what we're talking about here with the decline of Western civilization. In its place is emerging this new, wicked, monstrous, and I would say satanic system. And they're now rubbing it in our faces in the Olympic ceremonies, in the Super Bowl ceremonies, even in the television shows that masquerade as entertainment.
There's even one thing that's extremely perversive. I'm talking about gender transition surgery. It's widespreading in the United States. In fact, I think it's leftist newspeak, because there's nothing like gender transition surgery. It's mutilation of the body of the young children. We are not allowing them to vote because we consider them not adult enough to vote, but we allow them to destroy their own bodies. And the worst thing, it cannot be reversed because modern science and medicine doesn't have the ability to reverse it. So adult people who should be responsible for young children now are brainwashing them and destroying their lives because they won't be able to have family, they won't be able to have children. And in fact, it's something so perversive that even in USSR, they didn't come with such a crazy idea.
Yep. And I think this is another symptom of exactly what we're talking about here. And I believe it's much more than just about mutilating children. That's what we see. That's the manifestation of this. But ultimately, if you understand what the real agenda is, again, we go back to this is diabolical. This is from the pit of hell. Just less than 20 years ago, the homosexual movement was saying, oh, homosexuals should be allowed to be married. Homosexuals should be allowed to have families. They should be allowed to have children. They don't need a mother and a father. 2 fathers is fine. 2 mothers is fine. And of course, that's ridiculous. Children need a mother and a father. That's how God designed the family. Now they've taken it a step further. Now they say there is no male. There is no female. That means there is no mother. There is no father. These are social constructs. And of course, it's also a precursor to another ideology, another movement that is profoundly diabolical, and this is the transhuman movement. The idea that we are going to transcend our biology, we're going to transcend our humanity, we're going to merge with technology, we're going to genetically engineer our babies, we're going to merge with artificial intelligence. These ideas, I think, are straight from the pit of hell. They deny the essence of what it is to be human, and of course we know humans are made in the image of God. So this is a perversion that is unbelievably wicked. Yes, the physical mutilation of a child is something that anybody involved in ought to be going to prison for, right? This is something that even a few years ago, we would have thrown these people in prison for surgically mutilating a child. But it's even worse than destroying the body of a child. This is about destroying the very essence of humanity. It's about destroying the family. It's about destroying and waging war on even reality itself.
My notion is that modern governments, the democratic liberal governments in the West, are now openly working against their own citizens. We've seen it lately in Great Britain with the riots, where now they are jailing people for memes on Facebook. They get 2-3 years. And the foreigners who are murderers, they are released free from the jails, yeah? It's the same with the immigration. Our governments have all the means, military and police, to stop the inflow of illegal immigration. Poland built a wall on the border with Belarus, and someone is trying to tell me that the greatest and most powerful country in the world, it's United States, cannot build the wall on the border with Mexico. It's a fake.
Of course, it's a fake. Of course, it is. The U.S. government wants the border wide open for the purpose of destroying the national sovereignty of the United States, for the purpose of destroying the traditions, the culture, the values that once existed here, because again, they're not compatible with this global project that they want to build. And in addition to creating this one world system as a precursor to that, and the globalist strategists have talked about this now openly for many years, they now are moving very rapidly toward creating these regional governments. And of course, in Europe, you guys know this better than anybody. You have the European Union, which is usurping the national sovereignty of the formerly independent nations of Europe. Well, Klaus Schwab talks about this in his book on the Great Reset. Henry Kissinger talks about this in his book on World Order. The European Union is merely the model that they want to use for every region of the world. So in South America, they've got the Union of South American States, or the Union of South American Nations. In Africa, they're imposing now an African Union on the people of Africa. And incidentally, it's the European Union, the U.S. government, and the Communist Chinese that are financing this. The Africans really don't have much interest in this. They're just getting bribed from Western powers and from China. Vladimir Putin, of course, is building the Eurasian Union out of the former Soviet space. So the whole world now is falling under these regional governments. The European Union is merely the premier example of this, but it's all part of this bigger plan. And a key part of that is moving populations around in enormous numbers. It's opening the border of the United States with Latin America, now Africa, Middle East, are all coming here. We've got probably 50, 60 million illegal immigrants. As soon as they get legalized, they'll be able to bring their families, so their whole village will be here soon. And then, and we're watching this happen in Western Europe. London, now the natives are a minority. Frankfurt, yes. The natives are a minority. Brussels, the natives are a minority. Malmo, the natives are a minority. So you wake up and you look around and you say, I don't have anything in common with these people. I don't have the same history. I don't have the same tradition. I don't even speak the same language. I don't like these people. Why do we have these lines on a map called national borders? Let's just dispense with that and recognize that, as the former UN migration czar Peter Sutherland said, we're all one human family and we don't need the nation state. So any institution that competes on the level of authority, power, influence with this one world system that they want to build has to be deconstructed. And so the family, the church, even the nation state is now under relentless assault.
Yes, a great example is California in the United States. The Democrats brought in a lot of people. Now they have citizenship, and it's impossible for a Republican candidate to win the presidential elections in there.
That's right. California is the model for the United States. The exact same thing happened. California was a very conservative state. They had Ronald Reagan for their governor, and then they did what they called an amnesty program, where all of the illegal immigrants were given a path to citizenship, and suddenly, presto, you have a Democratic. And that's one of the big reasons why they're doing it. They want more leftist voters who don't understand American history, who don't understand the American traditions. That's one of the big reasons why they're doing this. And again, California is the model for the rest of the United States.
In 1999, a famous Italian philosopher Augusto Del Noce died, and his last text was titled Marxism died in the East because it realized itself in the West. And it was 1989 when the Soviet Union was collapsing, in Poland, communism also, and his notion was like a warning to the West: don't be happy, because the communists and Marxists didn't die. It already infiltrated your world, but you are not aware of it. Don't you think that 95% of political class in the West, they are neo-Marxist far left? If you listen to Kamala Harris, if you listen to Joe Biden, if you listen to Emmanuel Macron or Keir Starmer, or even Rishi Sunak before, who considers himself to be a conservative, and that's a fake. There was just a name. There was nothing conservative about him. If you know the history of political ideas, when you listen to them, you hear Chairman Mao, Lenin, and Karl Marx. Do you think the West has been infiltrated by neo-Marxism?
There's no question about it. Now, I will say that I don't believe the people at the highest levels of the food chain actually believe in Marxism themselves. I think it's a smokescreen. It's a fake ideology to get useful idiots on board. But if you look, for example, at the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto as outlined by Karl Marx, this has now become mainstream political thought across what used to be known as Christendom. We all agree that the government should educate our children. We all agree with progressive income taxes. We all agree that the government should micromanage the economy. So we have become, in a very real sense, neo-Marxist. And as for the collapse of the Soviet Union, I think we were deceived once again. One of the most important defectors who ever defected to the Western world, as far as I'm concerned, he went through Finland to the United States, was a senior operative in the KGB's Department D. His name was Anatoly Golitsyn, and he made a series of over 200 very specific predictions, starting back in the late 70s, and then he published 2 books on this in the early 1980s, where he warned that they were planning a fake collapse of the Soviet Union, a fake collapse of the communist regimes in Europe, in Eastern Europe. And what would happen, he said, is that the same communist criminals who just a few years earlier had been operating concentration camps, murdering their political opponents, oppressing the people ruthlessly, would rebrand themselves. They'd become businessmen. They'd become leaders of newly renamed political parties. In Bulgaria, we saw this so clearly. The Bulgarian Communist Party became the Bulgarian Socialist Party. Same people. Right. So after the Nazi regime fell in Germany, of course, we prosecuted the war criminals. We hanged many of them. When the Soviet regime fell, what happened? All the same criminals just rebranded themselves. They bought up state assets for pennies on the dollar. They remained in control. And what he said was in his books, New Lies for Old and The Perestroika Deception, he said that at the end of this process, after all of these predictions would come true, there would be the grand finale. He said this would be a second October revolution where the entire world, the communist Chinese, the Russians, the communist forces around the world would stage a global second October revolution where the entire world would then fall under this tyrannical global apparatus. And I think, unfortunately, we're getting very, very close to that without a whole lot of people even connecting the dots and realizing where this is all going.
There was a famous communist called Leo Trotsky, inventor of Trotskyism, and he was so far to the left that he had to escape from USSR. He went to Mexico, but he was assassinated on the order of Stalin. And his main notion was that the communist revolution can only succeed in the global scale if communism will take over the whole planet. Do you think that globalism, in fact, is a new version of communism, of communist revolution?
I think the globalists and the communists are working very closely together. And probably the epitome of this is the World Economic Forum. They don't even hide it. You've got the World Economic Forum for 40 years now, collaborating with and building up the mass murdering Chinese Communist Party, the mass murdering CCP. And they brag about this. They put out press releases with Klaus Schwab shaking hands with Xi Jinping. We're so proud of our collaboration together. Bill Gates. And so I don't think they're communists in the ideological sense that they believe we should have no private property and we should have equality. Communism, globalism, etc. They're all branches. They're all fruits on the same diabolical tree. And they want global totalitarianism. And so I think when Klaus Schwab talks about the stakeholder model, and even the communism that exists in China, it's not so much traditional Marxism. It's much more akin to fascism, National Socialism, where corporate power and government power merge into one monstrous apparatus to oppress the people and keep the elites in permanent control. And I think that's very clearly what they're working toward.
What do you think is the future of the Western world? Here in Europe, there's a possibility of ethnic war because of huge masses from Muslim countries. In United States, I think you could change into some kind of failed state like in South America, or we could have a secular global technocratic tyranny imposed by the globalist.
Yeah, I think all those are very real possibilities. I can't say I can predict the future, but I say there's a number of very real possibilities that I think are at least possible, if not probable. The utter destruction of the United States, I think, is a very real possibility. And, people think Trump will save us. I don't think Trump can stop this from happening by himself. Now, God can intervene. There can be some sort of miracle. But even if Donald Trump wins the election and they can't cheat and steal it, We already know how they will respond. They will send the terror mobs to burn down our cities. They'll open up the border. You'll see secret cells of CCP special agents and special operatives blowing things up, assassinating sheriffs, causing civil unrest. So I think there's a very real chance that the United States goes into civil war or goes into total tyranny as a precursor to this global system. But I will say also, and I don't think it's all doom and gloom, I still believe in the sovereignty of God. I still believe that God is on his throne. I still believe that God is ultimately in charge. And I believe that God's promises in the Bible are real and true. So when he says that the gates of hell will never prevail against the church of Jesus Christ, I'm not worried about these evildoers being able to stop the church or the march of the gospel across the world. It may look very different. The United States as a nation may cease to exist, although the ideas, the biblical foundation that underpin it will not cease to exist. And so I think we're in for a period of profound unrest, profound economic, political turmoil, potentially even a third world war. But at the end of it all, I am confident that God remains on his throne. I'm confident that the evildoers eventually will be stopped. You know, if you look at some of these ideas that these people have, it's like they're trying to build a new Tower of Babel. And I encourage people to go back to Genesis chapter 11. I don't think they're going to be able to succeed on all these crazy things they're talking about. They're talking about becoming gods. They're talking about this one world order. I don't think that this is going to work out very well for them. I do believe that God is ultimately going to expose and stop all of this. When that comes, I don't know, but I do know for sure I don't want to be on the wrong side of this. And so I encourage people, go read Psalm 2, go to the Psalms, read Psalm 2. I mean, we're watching this happen. The kings of the earth, the rulers conspiring, taking counsel together against God and his anointed. God is laughing at them, and God is going to speak to them in his wrath. So I would advise all these clowns that think they're so powerful, that think they're going to do this, that, and the other. You need to repent right now. You need to turn from your wicked ways because your end is coming. Go read Psalm 37. God sees the day of your destruction. So now would be a real good time to lay down your weapons and surrender your life to God.
Trump is not so far right as personally I would like him to be. He's not Alexander the Great who could save our civilization, but I think he is like, he could stop, at least for some time, these bad processes that are going on. If Kamala wins, everything is finished, I think.
Yeah. And in reality, I don't think Trump can stop this by himself because it's like a tidal wave. And I think Trump wants to try to stop it. And I know a lot of people close to him who want to try to stop it. But the forces now arrayed against us are so huge. It's going to take a profound cultural transformation. It's not enough for just a political leader. You know, we have a truism in the United States that politics is downstream from culture. And that's true. And culture is downstream from education. So it took generations to get into this mess. If we're going to turn around, it's going to take generations. But I would encourage people not to lose hope, get involved, raise a good and proper family that knows and loves the Lord, prepare for tough times ahead. But we're going to get out of it. It's going to be okay. And praise God, we know he's ultimately in charge.
Yes, Alex, and in my opinion, we are at war. It's a spiritual war against neo-Marxists, neo-communists, globalists who are trying to destroy our civilization, our way of life, and impose some kind of totalitarian world like George Orwell described in his 1984. And as the great Steve Bannon said, this is a war, this is a jihad, this is a crusade against the deep state. So I think we are all in it. Is it Europe or United States, because we have similar problems and we have similar enemies in the global institutions. So I wish you all the luck in your work, and I encourage everybody to follow you.
Thank you so much. People can sign up for my newsletter. It's in English, but it's free, libertysentinel.org. Thank you for having me, and I hope we'll talk again soon.
Yes, I hope so also. God bless you, and God bless the United States.
God bless you too, and God bless Poland. Thank you.